Thank you very much for coming here today. My name is Victor Hahn. I'm with Philip Morris USA. We'll be beginning in just in a moment with some opening comments. We'll take questions after those are completed. We do have a live link up to New York City, to our offices in New York, and we'll be taking questions from them after the completion of this press conference. So when this one is done, please allow for a few minutes of break. You're welcome to stay if you want to participate. But we'll be starting to take Q's and A's from New York afterwards. Because of that, I would hope that everybody would be able to stay clear of the camera so there's a clear view. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming to this briefing. My name is Murray Bring. I'm Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Philip Morris Companies. With me today are Steve Parrish, Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Philip Morris USA, and to his right, Herb Wachtell, founding and senior partner of the law firm of Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz in New York. Earlier this morning, Philip Morris filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the American broadcasting companies and several ABC employees for false and defamatory statements made on ABC's Day One news show and other news programs. The suit was filed in Richmond, Virginia Circuit Court. The essential allegation by ABC on these broadcasts was that cigarettes are artificially spiked with nicotine during the manufacturing process in order to keep people smoking. These allegations are not true, and ABC knows that they are not true. The facts are these. Nicotine occurs naturally in tobacco leaf. Philip Morris does not in any way, shape, or form spike its cigarettes with nicotine. There is, in fact, a net loss of nicotine during the cigarette manufacturing process. That net loss for every Philip Morris brand, without exception, runs 20 to 25%. And the overall nicotine content in cigarettes has declined by more than 50% over the past 40 years. ABC was aware of these facts prior to the February 28 broadcast. ABC chose to ignore these facts. After the false statements were initially broadcast, ABC was again informed of the inaccuracies, yet the statements were repeated again and again on various ABC broadcasts. As a result of the false and defamatory statements broadcast by ABC, the price of Philip Morris stock declined dramatically. Members of Congress called for investigations into cigarette manufacturing processes. Commissioner Kessler of the Food and Drug Administration expressed his concern. And even President Clinton, on a recent ABC broadcast, stated, and I quote, "That really bothered me when I heard that more nicotine was going to make sure that people were hooked," close quote. To help set the record straight, this week we met with officials from the Food and Drug Administration who were given a scientific briefing and a tour of our manufacturing facilities. We will be offering that same opportunity to members of Congress and General Accounting Office officials. At Philip Morris, we are proud of our products and the millions of people who consume them and produce them. There is no corporation in this country more committed to freedom than is Philip Morris. As the manufacturer of a controversial product, we well understand the importance of all of our freedoms, including a free press that speaks for and to the diversity of this country. But we must draw the line at libel. I would now like to introduce Herb Wachtell, our counsel in this matter, to discuss specifics of the lawsuit, after which we will be happy to entertain your questions. Herb?
Good morning. I'm Herb Wachtell of the law firm of Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz, representing the Philip Morris plaintiffs in the litigation. You've all received a copy of what is called a motion for judgment that was filed this morning in the Virginia State Court, Circuit Court in Richmond. A motion for judgment under Virginia practice is the equivalent of a complaint in a lot of other jurisdictions. As set forth in the court papers, Philip Morris has brought a defamation action against ABC to redress the harm caused by statements made on several ABC programs, most notably the February 28 and March 7 Day One programs, in which Philip Morris and other tobacco companies were accused of artificially spiking cigarettes by adding extraneous amounts of nicotine for the express purpose of keeping smokers hooked. The complaint, I'll refer to it as a complaint, describes in considerable detail how tobacco is processed for use in the final cigarette product. It establishes that the allegations in the Day One program are false. We, as a law firm, have satisfied ourselves by our investigation that this is a meritorious lawsuit. As the complaint details, only infinitesimal trace amounts of nicotine end up in the blended product from any of the processes referred to in the Day One programs. Indeed, as set forth, the amounts are so small as to not be quantifiable even by standard measuring techniques. Moreover, as the complaint sets forth, substantial amounts of nicotine are actually lost in the manufacturing process, and the final cigarette product contains less nicotine than the original tobacco plant. We are confident that this lawsuit will establish that ABC's charge that Philip Morris adds extraneous nicotine to hook smokers was clearly false. Our firm will be working in conjunction with the Hunton and Williams firm of Richmond, Virginia. I will be pleased to answer questions that will explain the complaint or help in understanding the complaint. However, as counsel in the litigation, I am under certain constraints. I will not be going into our proofs and evidence, and questions that go to matters other than the complaint itself should more appropriately be addressed to Murray Bring or Steve Parrish.
Thank you, Herb. At this point, we'll be glad to entertain questions. I would appreciate it, ladies and gentlemen, if you would first identify yourself and your affiliation. Yes, sir.
CNN. It's not just ABC, the Food and Drug Administration, that's suggesting that there is evidence to the effect that you do alter or enhance the nicotine in your cigarettes. Are you going to sue Commissioner Kessler, too, or how do you respond to the Commissioner's concern that there is additional nicotine in the product?
Yes, well, let me tell you how we have responded thus far. We have invited Commissioner Kessler to come down to Richmond to examine our manufacturing facilities and to receive an in-depth briefing on the process itself and the role of nicotine in tobacco and the way in which it's manufactured. Commissioner Kessler had a group of his employees at our facility 2 days this week. They have had an extensive scientific briefing. We have given them a complete tour of the manufacturing facility and have shown them how we process tobacco, demonstrating throughout that entire procedure that nicotine is actually removed from the cigarettes and not added to it. We believe we had a very good session with Commissioner Kessler. We are hopeful, or rather with his people, we are hopeful that as a result of this tour and the understanding that his staff has received from it, that they now realize what the facts are.
Can I just follow up?
Surely.
Is it less a question of whether or not you add nicotine than whether you fine-tune the cigarette, knowing just how much nicotine is necessary to addict the consumer, and you keep that nicotine level perfectly set so that the smoker will be hooked?
Well, that's several parts to that question. Let me address as many of them as I can and can recall. I think I'd like to get back, first of all, to what the essential allegation of the ABC broadcast was, because that is what this lawsuit is all about. ABC's broadcast, if you're familiar with it, made it very clear that the allegation they were making is that we spike our cigarettes with artificially induced and extraneous quantities of nicotine. That is absolutely true. Now, on the question that you have, the subsequent question that you raised about the levels of nicotine in our products, What? I'm sorry.
True or untrue?
It's true they said it, it's false. It's true that that's what the essential allegation is.
Yes, well, obviously the allegation is untrue or we wouldn't be bringing this lawsuit. Thank you for correcting me. With respect to the question you've raised about the levels of nicotine in our various products, we manufacture a broad variety of products that have various nicotine and tar deliveries. There's a broad range that are available to consumers. Every one of those products, the advertising for every one of those products discloses the exact delivery of nicotine and tar in the cigarette. These products were developed in response to consumer preferences. Nicotine and tars relate to the taste and the quality of the product. And over the years, it's become clear that various smokers prefer various types of nicotine and tar deliveries. And so we have endeavored to make products which satisfy all of those consumer preferences. There's nothing secret about it. It has been disclosed for over 20 years. The fact of the matter is that in each of these instances, if you look at the levels of nicotine in our products over the past several years, there has been a reduction across the board in all tar and nicotine deliveries. And the further fact of the matter is that all of those deliveries are specified on the advertisements and are disclosed to the public, so that every smoker who decides to smoke one of our products knows exactly what the tar and nicotine levels are. So there's no manipulation, which I think is a somewhat pejorative word. We make products to specification, and they have to be the same in order to qualify for the deliveries that are disclosed in the advertisements. Yes, sir.
Ken Askey from Scripps Howard News Service. Is there any difference between the way you make cigarettes and the way other tobacco companies make cigarettes?
Well, I can't really speak for other companies. I can say this. Many of the processes that are involved, such as the reconstituted tobacco process, which was a focal point of the ABC Day One program, has been something that's been disclosed in the public literature for years. The first patent on reconstituted tobacco processing was issued over 150 years ago. The process is described in great detail in a variety of government documents, including the Surgeon General's reports of 1979 and 1981, I believe it was. I believe that's a process that probably every cigarette manufacturing company uses, but I cannot speak with any authority on what the specific processes are that other companies use.
Well, you're speaking for the industry when you make these charges.
I am speaking for Philip Morris when I make these charges. The allegations that were contained in the ABC broadcast, some of them specifically referred to Philip Morris, others of them referred to the entire industry. We are a member of the industry, and what I'm saying is that those allegations, as they applied to Philip Morris, are untrue and malicious. Yes, sir.
How did you arrive at the $10 billion figure? Is that just the loss in stock? I'm sorry, Paul Corson with Associated Press Radio. How did you arrive at the $10 billion figure, please?
The complaint, I think, sets forth the damage aspects of the case. I think it'd be important to focus on the fact that Philip Morris is a very large company. Our domestic tobacco business is certainly one of the core businesses of our company. One element of the damage that is referred to in the complaint is that our stock price did go down significantly as a result of the ABC broadcast and the subsequent events leading from that broadcast. I think you should bear in mind that we have thousands of shareholders, that there are over 800 million shares of Philip Morris stock traded. Therefore, if there is $1 decline in the share price of our stock, that's almost $1 billion in damages right there. The domestic tobacco portion of our business is a very important core business. We believe that the ABC allegations and the subsequent events that have happened have the potential and in fact have damaged that business. We're talking about large businesses that are very profitable, and we think that the damages we have specified are not at all unreasonable. The other part of the claim for damages is a punitive damage award, which we hope to obtain in the amount of $5 billion. Yes, ma'am.
Kitty Pilgrim, CNN. Has there been any impact on sales since the broadcast?
We've seen no evidence of that. Yes.
Why did you decide to file in Richmond? Is it because there's a better understanding of your product and industry there?
Well, no, actually, we had a choice in a number of places where we could file this suit, but Richmond to us seemed like a natural place to do it. We are a Virginia corporation. Our domestic tobacco business, the Philip Morris Incorporated, is also a Virginia corporation. It is the headquarters of our manufacturing operations are in Richmond, so it seemed to us to be as logical a place to file that lawsuit as anywhere. Yes, sir.
Ron Taylor from the Washington Times. As a result of this lawsuit, will smokers know more about the specific ingredients that go into cigarettes?
Well, this lawsuit does not focus on ingredients. The fact of the matter is that the ingredient subject, which is one that was covered in the second ABC broadcast, I should also point out, however, that that second broadcast repeated the false and malicious comments about nicotine. But the subject of ingredients is something that the government has known a great deal about for many, many years. There is a statute that was adopted in 1984 which requires the cigarette industry to submit a list of all ingredients to the Department of HHS. As a matter of fact, before that statute became effective, the industry voluntarily submitted lists of ingredients to the government. The government has had these lists for years. We have offered to make our scientists available to them if they have any problems with any of the ingredients that are used in cigarettes. They have never suggested to us that they do. We are firmly of the opinion that all of the ingredients that are used in our products are safe as used in the cigarettes. And so you should also realize that these ingredients are matters of that relate to trade secrets. They relate to the formulas which constitute our various products. You don't find any manufacturers of consumer products really disclosing all of the ingredients that go into their product because it is very proprietary and it is a trade secret. But I think that the government has been fully aware of these ingredients for years and has not raised a problem with us concerning any of them. Yes, sir.
Mike Wallace from CBS. As you may know, 60 Minutes is doing a report this coming Sunday on fire-safe cigarettes. And we've been trying to talk to you people at Philip Morris for a year and a half. I've been in touch with Victor Hahn, who started this news conference this morning, and he can tell you about that. Over 1,000 Americans die each year in fires that are ignited by cigarettes. The question is, does Philip Morris have a project underway now to develop a fire-safe cigarette, and how far along is that development?
Mr. Wallace, we've been working on fire-safe cigarettes for years. We have a continuous project in that regard. I cannot tell you how far away from completion we are. We are working on it, however.
According to some documents that we have gotten from inside your company, you have a Project Hamlet, which seems, from the documents that we have come into possession of, which seems to indicate that the Philip Morris Company does indeed have a fire-safe cigarette tested as long ago as 1987. And it would seem, by simple mathematics, that in just the last 7 years, 8 years, perhaps 8,000 Americans have died because they haven't had access to that fire-safe cigarette.
I'm not familiar with Project Hamlet, as you describe it. Let me say, Mr. Wallace, that I'm aware of the fact that you've been working on this program. I'm also aware of the fact that attorneys for the industry have met with you or your staff and have provided a great deal of information concerning it. I think we have also advised you that if you will indicate to us any specific questions that you have concerning that, we will try to provide answers.
Not so, Mr. Brain. We've tried and tried again, and I've talked just yesterday once again to Victor Hahn, and he said that senior management has said to him, Philip Morris will not talk to us about this.
I believe, Mr. Wallace, that we have said we would not appear on your program without first being advised of what the questions were. If you will talk to one of our corporate affairs people or Mr. Hahn and advise us what your questions are, we will be glad to try to get you answers. let me say, this conference was called for our suit against ABC, and I'd like to get on with that subject. If you have any other questions. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Bring, is because you have been stonewalling us for a year or a year and a half on the subject of fire-safe cigarettes, and you've just said something that is inaccurate. I told Mr. Hahn, hold it just a second, this is a news conference. I told Mr. Hahn yesterday that I would be happy if they go along, if you people go along and give us somebody to talk to from Philip Morris about Project Hamlet. He said, I'll get back to you yesterday. He didn't.
Mr. Wallace, I think I've answered your question. Are there any other questions about our suit against ABC? Yes, sir.
Peter Harden, Richmond Times-Dispatch. Is your timing in filing the suit today tied in any way to the scheduled testimony tomorrow of David Kessler on Capitol Hill? Some people on the Hill have suggested that it is a preemptive move.
Now, the timing of this suit is, and the hearing tomorrow are purely coincidental. We've been working on this suit since the ABC broadcast aired. It has taken us time to get in a position to file the suit, as Mr. Wachtel indicated. He conducted an investigation of his own. That took some time. It took time to draft the complaint. It's purely coincidental that it's being filed today. We did it as quickly as we could. Yes, sir.
Ron Taylor, in the month since the in the nearly 30 days since the initial broadcast, what have you been doing to try to get ABC to satisfy your complaints, and what's been their response?
Well, before the first broadcast aired, we sent a statement over to ABC making it very clear that we do not spike our cigarettes. They chose to ignore that statement. When they repeated the allegation on their March 7th broadcast, and prior to that time, we sent a statement, another statement to ABC, which they chose to ignore, and as I say, repeated the allegations on March 7th. We issued a public statement to all of the media concerning this issue of spiking. We have been in touch with government agencies that have raised questions about it. As I said, the Food and Drug Administration has paid a visit to our facilities. We have also invited the GAO to come down and have a briefing and an inspection tour of our facilities in response to a request that that agency received from Senator Kennedy to look into the matter. We've been fully responsive to members of Congress and others who were concerned and who were misled by the allegations that were contained in the ABC program. Yes.
Do you envision any kind of settlement before the suit reaches fruition, some sort of retraction, broadcast retraction or something?
Well, that's not up to me, obviously. I don't know what ABC's response to this will be. We have brought this lawsuit because we feel very seriously about it. We think we have been damaged by the allegations which were false. We believe we're entitled to a court award of damages. What the progression of the litigation will be, I can't say. I have no idea what ABC's reaction to this will be. Yes, sir.
Nightly business report. Do you believe that there is linkage between the ABC program and FDA Commissioner Kessler looking into the possibility of designating cigarettes as a drug and the proposed tax increase on cigarettes that the administration is looking for and that Congress is looking at for health care?
I have no idea whether there's any linkage there or not. Commissioner Kessler's letter to the coalition to which he responded did make a reference to the issue of spiking. Now, whether that was something that he had an independent interest in or whether it was prompted by the fact that ABC was going to be running this program, I really don't know. But we're focusing on what we consider to have been a scurrilous charge by ABC, which was clearly false and which they knew to be false. Yes, sir.
With the New York Times regional papers, I have a question about the broader climate you're operating in. You're talking at a time when Congress is talking about cigarette taxes, when Congress is also talking about further restrictions on smoking in school, when you've had several surgeon generals in a row now who have been unrelenting in their criticism of the industry. I'm wondering, what is it like working in the tobacco industry these days? Do you feel loved, or?
I think your publication did a rather lengthy article on that in the magazine section last week. The cigarette industry is an old industry. Those of us who work in it, I think, are very proud to be involved. I certainly am proud to be an executive of Philip Morris Companies. I think we're an honorable company. I'm very proud of the things that we do in terms of supporting the community and the various activities that occur in our plant facilities and around the world. I think we make high-quality, high-standard products, not only in tobacco, but in food and beer as well. I realize that cigarettes, like many other products, is a controversial product. I think emotions sometimes run very high. I think sometimes unreasonably high. We're aware of all of those things, but we think we are selling a high-quality product. It is a legal product. It is legal in every country in the world, which very few products can say. And I think that we are prepared to address the issues that confront us from time to time. The reason we brought this lawsuit is because we believe that sometimes the hysteria surrounding the issue of tobacco makes people think that we are fair game for anything that people want to say about us, even though it is clearly untrue and defamatory. We think we have to draw the line at that, and that's the reason for this lawsuit.
I ask a question having nothing to do with,
of course.
With my, nobody likes a lawsuit. Nobody likes a libel suit. You don't,
and we in the news media don't like libel suits. Is it conceivable that this could all have been turned aside had you people been more available on camera with ABC, or conceivably on camera with 60 Minutes to talk about these things?
I know this has nothing to do with your program, Mr. Wallace. That's a hypothetical question. I do not know, but whether we were available for ABC or not, as I said before, we did provide them with information. If we're available or not is really irrelevant. I believe that a news organization has an obligation, both legal, ethical, and moral, to report the truth. If they know that it is not the truth, then they have no right to report it, and that is the allegation of this complaint. Yes, sir.
But if you don't, Matt's putting this to CNBC, but if you don't put yourself up for, whether it be on camera or on the record for debate, then you can't just hand out information and expect it to be taken as fact.
Well,
how do you respond to that? Then what can the news program do to report if you will not come forward and
we
answer
try
the
to be
questions
responsive as we think is appropriate. I should point out, Mr. Parrish just reminded me that on the ABC broadcast that we're talking about, R.J.R. Reynolds did make 2 of its employees available and were in fact interviewed and on the show and denied the allegations. Yes, sir.
Yes, Richard Harris from National Public Radio. I understand the distinction between spiking and adjusting the levels of nicotine that you do, but what real difference does that make if in fact if you end up with a product with a set amount of nicotine? How does that really change the argument about whether or not nicotine levels are manipulated?
Well, I think you have to draw a distinction between what ABC was alleging in this suit, which is spiking, and what you're talking about, which is adjusting levels. Spiking is an allegation that suggests, and in fact the ABC made it very clear that this was what they were charging, that we add extraneous nicotine to the product in large quantities in order to keep smokers hooked. That is almost a verbatim quote from their story. That is an outrageous allegation. It is totally untrue, and it is the allegation which has been picked up by everyone as a result of that broadcast, including President Clinton. It has poisoned the well. It has been believed and embraced by a number of people, members of Congress, members of the administration, members of the press, probably even members of the public. We believe that it is necessary to bring this lawsuit in order to correct the record, in order to recover damages for the injury that has been done, and to address the issue of spiking. Now, so I want to make it clear that the ABC program was not talking about simply adjusting levels. They were talking about spiking, and that was the principal element of the ABC program. As I've said before, the adjustment of nicotine levels is something that occurs naturally in the process. Nicotine is taken out at every step of the process. Nicotine is further removed when the filter is added through the porosity of the paper and the filtration. And the reason that we have to manufacture products that have a consistent level of nicotine, whatever that level is because it's required by the Federal Trade Commission in our disclosure to the public as to what the level is. If you didn't do that, smokers would not know what it is that they are smoking and what levels of nicotine and tar they're obtaining.
But let me follow up.
Sure.
From the standpoint of the FDA, they're arguing that nicotine is a drug because you are manipulating the levels. Whether or not the spiking allegation is true, does this really affect a response that you might have to the FDA that basically you're manipulating nicotine levels?
Yes, we obviously have a position on that. We do not think that the FDA has or should assert jurisdiction in this area. The fact of the matter is that we are not a food, we are not a drug, and we are not a cosmetic. Cigarettes falls into none of those categories, and those are the only three categories that the FDA has jurisdiction over. So we don't think there's an appropriate basis for FDA regulation.
Well, I don't think nicotine is a drug. You don't think nicotine is a drug? I mean, the FDA puts out a nicotine patch. That's a drug.
For 40 years, nicotine is used in cigarettes as not a drug. For 40 years, well, because nicotine in a patch is nothing more than nicotine. Nicotine in a cigarette is a natural element that is found in the plant itself. For 40 years, the FDA has taken the position that nicotine as used in cigarettes is not a drug. This is a dramatic departure by Commissioner Kessler to even suggest that the contrary is the case.
You mentioned that your product is high quality and a legal product, and later you say that this episode has poisoned the well, has a already controversial, to use your words, product been permanently damaged by that in this country and in this market?
I certainly hope not, but I think we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully, our consumers will realize once they know what the facts are, and hopefully the attention that this lawsuit will get, will realize that those allegations that were contained in the ABC program are false.
To follow up, I mean, this is your industry has taken a lot of hits lately, both regulatory and in sort of custom and practice. I mean, you can walk down the street outside this office building and see people standing outside office buildings who can't smoke inside their workplaces. I'm wondering whether or not what's happened here has underscored the fragile nature and perhaps even the dying nature of your industry in this market.
It's hard to say. I don't know what the answer to that question is. I'm very well aware of the things you referred to. I think it's unfortunate that smokers have increasingly become regarded as pariahs in the community. There are, after all, 50 million smokers in the United States. We very much support a program of accommodation which will accommodate both the desires of smokers to be able to enjoy the product in an environment which is not oppressive, and of non-smokers not to be in the presence of smokers if they choose not to. Yes, sir.
Eric Webb, Thompson Newspapers. You mentioned before that ABC had accused the tobacco industry, cigarette makers overall, and Philip Morris in particularly. Now, has Philip Morris met with any other cigarette makers before this lawsuit came about, before bringing this lawsuit?
We advised the other companies in the industry we were bringing the lawsuit.
Was a class action lawsuit considered?
Well, I don't think this would be an appropriate situation for a class action. We're only suing one corporation and a number of the individuals, employees of that corporation who were involved with this program. Yes, sir.
Cigarettes, I mean, when you said as intended, they cause health problems, according to every health professional I've talked to, or even death. Does that at all bother you or any of the other executives up there?
Well, I've heard the allegations. I think some of them are very extreme and inaccurate. But obviously, as I said before, we're making a controversial product. I think the fact of the matter is that there is no health question in America that has received more attention than that relating to smoking. And I think that every person in this country, as well as throughout the world, is aware of those allegations. It is a legal product, and therefore people, I think, particularly in a society such as ours, have the right to decide whether they want to use that product or not. And smokers, 50 million of them in this country, have decided they want to. So I don't have any problem with that. I think that's the way it should be, and I hope it will be the way it will continue to be.
Is smoking and health problems simply, it's only an allegation in your eyes?
Well, we have indicated that the epidemiological studies make it clear that smoking is a risk factor for certain diseases. That does not mean that it is a causative factor. What it means is that there is a basis for further research. So far, we do not believe that the research has indicated definitively one way or the other. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you said that your stock price declined. Luisa Escobar, Knight Ridder Financial News. You said that your stock price declined directly in response to these reports. Did you think that as a result of filing this lawsuit that there would be a direct impact on your stock price?
That's not one of the reasons we filed the lawsuit. I have no way of knowing how the market will respond, but the fact of the matter is one of the ABC broadcasts that we refer to in the complaint involved a statement by the reporter there drawing the connection between their program and the drop in our stock price. Yes, sir.
Kevin Roy with King Broadcasting. Along those lines, you said you base your $10 billion figure somewhat on the stock price decline. Yet at the same time, within the last month, there have been a number of other hits against the tobacco industry, the Pentagon banning smoking, some other things we could mention. So how can you directly attribute the day one program for the stock price decline?
Well, I think you just have to look at what happened the day after that program and the comments of ABC themselves to indicate that particular drop in stock price was related to the program. We do have, as was indicated before, we do have a hookup with New York that we have to get to. I'll be glad to take two more questions.
Why did you end the use of using flavor packages? You mentioned that in your motion. On December 31st,
we haven't ended the use of flavor packages. We ended in 1993 the use of a particular flavor package in one of our brands, and that was part of an ongoing process that we have been engaged in for several years to reduce the number of flavorings and ingredients that go into our products.
And who was the newly appointed head of the Consumer Product Safety Commission believes that cigarettes should indeed be regulated. 400,000 Americans die each year, according to the federal government, because of cigarettes. The only two unregulated products that I know of, perhaps you can inform us, are guns and cigarettes. Why should cigarettes not be regulated?
I think it's inaccurate, Mr. Wallace, to say that cigarettes are not regulated. There is extensive regulation of our product, first of all by Congress itself, which in an unprecedented fashion has taken it upon itself to write the specific warnings which must appear on all of our packages and advertising. We are regulated by the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms. We are regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. I think that it is inaccurate to say that there is no regulation applying to the product we manufacture. Ma'am, you had a question.
Rachel Novak, Science Magazine. Does your company or any other tobacco company have any research projects underway to look at alternative uses for tobacco?
I'm going to ask Mr. Parrish to answer that.
We've received that question from time to time, and we have always answered that we do not comment on what we're doing in our research department. That's a no comment.
Can you tell us whether or not you're coming out with Marlboro Express, as has been reported, the short cigarette for those who need their fix in a hurry?
We're not going to comment at this press conference on any of our marketing strategies either.
Is that report inaccurate? Is the report inaccurate that you're
I'm not sure which report you're
referring to? The one in
referring
Newsweek magazine suggesting that you're coming out with this cigarette.
I'm not going to comment on our marketing strategies.
Could you take one more question?
Sure, one more question.
Probably for the General Counsel. Have you been invited by Congressman Waxman tomorrow to testify? And are you going to? And if not, why not, given your feelings on the nature of nicotine?
We were invited by Congressman Waxman to appear before his subcommittee tomorrow. Our company, as Philip Morris, will not be attending the hearing to testify, but representatives of the industry will be testifying. And as Mr. Bring pointed out, we have met over extensive meetings in 2 days with, I believe it was 10 members of Commissioner Kessler's staff of FDA. And as I understand it, Commissioner Kessler will be testifying. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. I'd like to make one other announcement. We have an 8-minute film that we have prepared which will describe to you the manufacturing process of cigarettes as it occurs in our facilities. If any of you is interested in seeing that, it will be available to be shown in an adjacent room. We also have in your press kits a written document which describes that process. It's very similar to the film, but if you want to actually see it and how it works, you can take a look at that film.
Will copies be available? Copies be available?
You have the printed script.
Yes.
Is it? Yeah, it will be available, yeah.
Sir, Cap Cities owns a number of magazines around the country which you advertise in. Do you think that you'll be pulling your advertising from that, or have you considered that as an option?
Well, and as a matter of fact, Cap Cities, which owns ABC, also runs a lot of advertising from our food and beer companies, but that is not something we're considering at this time. One last question.
Yes, Brad Todd with the Raleigh News and Observer. Recently, 16,000 tobacco workers came to Washington to protest. Now you file a libel suit. Does this mark a different tone of the strategy of the tobacco industry from a few years back when tobacco congressional delegations were widely thought to have acceded to a compromise, say, on the airline smoking ban? Has the strategy changed?
Well, I wouldn't describe it as part of a mass strategy. I think, as has been reported here before, there are a number of things that are occurring in our industry. We think we try to develop what we consider to be the appropriate response to every one of them. On the federal excise tax, we thought it was very important for the administration and Congress to realize how many jobs would be lost if that tax went through and how many families in this country would be affected. Our employees decided that they would like to demonstrate that in a collective way, and that is what led to this march. With respect to this lawsuit, I think I've already indicated to you why we're doing that. We look at each one of these individually, and we'll fashion whatever response we think is appropriate. Thank you very much for coming.
Jeff? Comment.
Hey, hello, this is Ellen Merlo. We don't have you on video right now.
Ellen, we can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear us, Ellen?
Yes, first question's coming up right now.
I'm Lee First from Prudential Securities, and my question has two parts. First of all, if you win any damages, what portion of it might be taxable? And secondly, what would you do with the money? How much do we get?
Is it taxable? Is it taxable? I didn't hear the second and third parts of the question.
Speak right into the mic, please.
The second part is if you win any damages, what will you do with the proceeds?
I'm very sorry, but the sound system here is not quite good. I can't hear the questioner.
Can you hear me, Murray?
Yes, if you speak up at that level, I can, Ellen.
Okay. The question was, if we win this lawsuit, what will we do with the proceeds?
Well, hopefully, some of it will go to pay our legal fees. Although we would hope to get a separate award for legal fees from the court as well. I haven't really given much thought to that. It'll be obviously income in the year we receive it, and we'll do with it what we do with the rest of our income. On the question of whether the damages are taxable, I don't really know what the answer to that is. We'll have to consult our tax people on that.
Okay. Second question coming up.
Hi, I'm Maria Marshall with Dow Jones News Service. You said that the ABC allegations had damaged the domestic tobacco business, and then you later said that there was no evidence of sales impact. Could you say how it's damaged your business more specifically?
I'm sorry, but that was broken up. I didn't hear any of the question.
Okay, maybe come up here and ask the question, because it seems that this is the only mic that's working.
Hello, my name is Maria Muschel with Dow Jones News Service. You said that you believe the allegations by ABC have damaged your domestic tobacco business, and then later said that you had no evidence of an impact on sales. Can you be specific in how it's damaged the business?
Yes, well, the complaint addresses that, actually, and it points out that as a result of these allegations, there are a variety of things that have happened already and that could get worse. such as a possible impact on Congress's thinking on FDA regulation. We've already seen indications of that from Congressman Waxman and Senator Kennedy and others. Also, the possible impact that these allegations might have in the way Congress views the issue of the federal excise tax. So there are a number of legislative and governmental activities that could impact very adversely on our business, all of which are set forth in the complaint.
Next question? Any other questions? Mike, why don't you come up here? Mike Janowski from the New York Times is coming to the mic.
Said that you had indicated to ABC that their information was wrong. Would you be very, very specific about what efforts you made to give them your side of it, and what specifically you told them that they didn't use?
We sent them a statement prior to the airing of this program in which we categorically denied and made it clear to them that we do not add extraneous amounts of nicotine to our product. They ignored that.
Could you give us the date of that, please?
I believe it was on the morning of the 28th. Is that correct? There may have been two different statements. All right. Mr. Hahn is correcting me. The first statement to ABC was on the 25th of February. The second one was on the morning of the 28th.
Anybody else have a question? I think that's it from New York. Thank you very much.
Thank you.